listening to the Har Podcast with Harpreet and Jagraj.
ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸੁਣ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਹਰ ਪੋਡਕਾਸਟ ਹਰਪ੍ਰੀਤ ਪੰਦੇਰ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ।
ਹਾਂਜੀ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸੁਣ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਹਰ ਪੋਡਕਾਸਟ। ਮੇਰਾ ਨਾਮ ਹੈਗਾ ਹਰਪ੍ਰੀਤ ਪੰਦੇਰ। ਪ੍ਰੋਡਿਊਸ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਮੇਰਾ ਛੋਟਾ ਵੀਰ ਜਗਰਾਜ ਸਿੰਘ ਲਾਲੀ। ਤੇ ਅੱਜ ਵਿਸ਼ੇਸ਼ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ। I've known this guy for, I want to say, exactly 10 years now. He's been a colleague of mine on the hockey night. We met on a golf course, and at that time we did not know that we'd be doing this together for 9 years. He's doing more than that now. We're going to catch up with Mr. Randip Janda. Randip, how are you? Thanks for being with us today.
It's an honor. I'm first time joining the Harp podcast. It's an honor. And Harp, not only did we meet on the golf course, Mayfair Lakes in Richmond, BC, that was the day I gave up golf for about 5 years. So the first time I met you was the last time I golfed for about 5 years. I'm back at it now, though.
Yeah, we put a lot of balls in that lake, and that was my first time there. And then later on, I found out the place was called Unfair Lakes.
Yeah, no, I put probably a case of 12 myself in the water that day.
I was with Kaviraj the year after. He's like, why are you wasting the good balls that they gave you? Just take my cheap ones. He goes, I'll keep the good ones. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense.
No, it was good. That was the day that I almost took out Bhupinder Hundal too. Our former colleague on Hockey Night. I sliced it so hard that it almost hit him while he was sitting in the golf cart.
Dangerous actions. So you're just getting back from a trip from Europe. Tell us about that. I know you were gone for a while. Following your stories, it seemed like you were gone for at least 3 weeks. What was it?
Yeah, it was that almost exactly 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks. So it's rare for me. Usually what happens in the previous years was that I was working Hockey Night in Canada, Punjabi, Sportsnet 650, and then I would work a daily talk show too. So my days off, year round were vacation, a week here, maybe 2 weeks there. This year I was working a hockey schedule, which is not that dissimilar from a teacher schedule. So it was nice to actually get some time off in the summer. So I went to Italy, caught some soccer there, watched some F1. It was my sister's birthday. She flew out there and we met up with some friends. So it was nice to do something with the family as well. So recharged, ready to go, ready for hockey season.
Yeah, hockey season is it's already here. Training camp goes tomorrow.
Yeah.
So this is your year number 2 doing color analysis for the Canucks regional. Well, it's the only regional on the radio for Sportsnet 650. How's that, and how was your first year doing it?
Yeah, Harp, we worked together in that role. First time when we started at Hockey Night, it was cool, right? Like it was a steep learning curve back then too. To be doing hockey commentary, but Punjabi doing it in Punjabi, that was a little different. Fast forward I want to say 7 years, 8 years, and to do that in English, it was still, you have to learn the kind of the nuance of the game, even to a further level, right? Like the way that we analyze in studio and television, it's one way of covering the game, but when you're in the play, as as a fellow color commentator, it was a cool experience being in the building every single night, learning from not only my colleague Brendan Batchelor and former pros themselves, just having that, finding your own voice, which is something that seems so easy, but you got to have your own style, right? If we look at all the great play-by-play commentators, color commentators in the past, they're not necessarily born like that. They figure out what their style is, they figure out what their niche is. And, the first year for me was just a lot of fun, being able to do all of these things, learning from people, learning kind of from coaches as well, having conversations with a lot of the coaches in Vancouver, traveling coaches. But more importantly for me, just finding my voice, right? Like in every aspect of broadcasting, we, as a Hockey Night in Canada Punjabi host, I kind of broadcast one way when I'm a color commentator. Finding who I am in that role was really cool. So I'm totally excited for year 2. This is something that I first year you're kind of learning, and part of the season goes by, you kind of start to pick it up a little bit, and you're really getting into the zone. This year I feel like game 1 we'll be ready to go. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
You sound great on that in that color role, and listening to the games, like I know you so well. I could tell that this is new for you, and as the season got along, a month in or whatever, I could feel like this guy's getting more and more seasoned, right? Because even if I compared to Harn Ryan doing the English, it's still a new thing. We're commentating, but we're doing it in a different language. So as similar as they are, that there is the differences, and there's going to be that learning curve for sure.
And one thing I think that, with TV and radio, it's that with TV, you're speaking to the visuals, as you know, right? A replay comes up, you maybe get heads up from a producer to say, hey, this is coming up, or you see it in the break. With radio, you tell your own story. So you can guide the discussion. Obviously, you want to be follow the big topics in the game, follow what happened, but at the same time, you don't necessarily have the visuals to guide you. So you're kind of crafting that story yourself, which at first, being a TV guy, you're kind of navigating that, because in a way, the visuals and television kind of help us at times, and sometimes they don't, depending on what you're expecting to say. But with radio, it's yours. What are you going to do with it? What story do you want to tell? What did you notice in the game? What did you notice on that last play? So it was a little bit of a difference. Me and you go back when we first started at Hockey Night in Canada Punjabi. We were the first two color commentators, right? We started almost. We like to joke about it. We were a week apart.
Yeah, a week or two. We use for those that don't know, Randip has the historic distinction of the first ever Mona on Hockey Night in Canada Punjabi.
That's right. When I retire, it's gonna follow me, I'm sure.
No, we have lots of those. He's the first, she's the first. We got our own little stuff to history within the show. So do you like calling the games in the rink or on a monitor? And before you answer that, I just want to tell those that maybe don't know about Hockey Night in Canada Punjabi that the most of the games we've called are off a monitor. That's all. I'm gonna leave it at that.
Post-COVID, it's not a shock anymore. Before, back in the day,
that's right.
I felt like I was ruining people's dreams when we break that news to them. It was like you could see their heart shatter when we told them.
Yeah. So
the question of what I prefer more.
Yeah, you got, I know what the answer is, but I want you to answer it.
Well, I like being in the building because the energy's there. You can feed off the crowd and all that. But I'm not gonna lie, Harp. The first month of the season, being in the arena was weird to me because I was so used to calling off the screen for so many years, right? So being in the rink it felt like, you're relying on a replay, you're relying on an angle, and you're like, wait a second, I'm not going to get that here because I'm in the rink, I'm watching this live, right? So in the end, the arena is the best because there's so much going on. You can see the play over top. But for the first month of the season last year, as I was figuring out the new role, I was like, man, just wish I was at our TV studio getting the angle.
Yeah, no, it's got to be different. I only got that one radio experience, and that's the football game Tack and I did, and we just kept reminding each other, hey, nobody's watching what we're watching. We're describing this, and we had to keep reminding each other that. So that is cool. So what's a typical game day for you on with the Canucks?
Yeah, last year for me it was such a new experience where it was just kind of you're figuring out as you go along. This year, a normal a game day experience for me is get up in the morning, game day skate. As you know, you've been to quite a few of them in your career too, and you kind of, whether you have a chance to talk to coaches, whether you have a chance to see how the lines are looking, the defensive pairs, starting goaltenders, you go hang out there, you kind of craft a plan based on the information you get. And then usually after that, I come back home and I do some more research. I'm one of those guys on game days, I would say the majority of what I do that day, especially just getting up to date on my notes. The work starts before the game day, but a lot of just focusing and getting on a lot of that information kind of in the mind, right? Which is something that is really important. If you're reacting within the second, last thing you want to be doing is going down at your notes. You want to have to internalize a lot of this stuff. So to me, it's more about being at the rink in the morning, coming back, working, and trying to internalize that information, and then head to the rink around 4 or 5 o'clock. The game's usually at 7 o'clock here in Vancouver time, and I like to get there early just to see. It's always great to chat with people that work for the other broadcast teams that are coming into town. It's always nice to kind of pick their brain. You can help them out as well, give them some information about the team you cover. And it's cool to actually just be in the rink before anybody else is there. There's a common, coaching kind of idea that sometimes people in acting do this, people in like theater do this, and broadcasting as well, where you go somewhere and you establish that's where you're going to be. That's your spot. And I'm very much like that too. And Harp, you can kind of, you do this on the TV side sometimes as well. I'm there sometimes early as well, whereas I like to get there early and just kind of have my spot ready. I wouldn't call it superstition, but I just like having that experience. So, I might get there a little bit earlier on game days, whether it's 4:30, 5 o'clock before everybody else, just to get set up and ready to go. And then after that, call the game, and then usually home probably around midnight, where it's a long day, but that's what we really enjoy, right? You get up in the morning and you start thinking about the game, and then you go to sleep with whatever the result is, whether the Canucks win, lose, or otherwise.
So pregame, is it kadhi roti or do you eat the press box meal?
Ooh, man. So, okay, we've off air, just so all the listeners know, this is a common conversation between me and Harp. Harp will share, if he's there before I am, he'll talk about, hey, the pregame meal is a good one today.
Well, I have to let you know, because you're Vaishnavi vegetarian,
That's
so
right.
sometimes it's primarily like a
Roast beef
meatloaf or whatever, like a pork roast or something, and there's
I
really
appreciate
not
it.
much for sides. So
he's always looking out on the khane peene. He's always looking at and letting me know what's vegetarian, what's not. I'm usually eat at rink guy. So in the broadcast gondola, Harpreet, ਤੈਨੂੰ ਤਾਂ ਪਤਾ ਹੀ ਆ ਕਿ ਉੱਥੇ meal ਹੁੰਦਾ ਆ, sandwich ਹੁੰਦੀ ਆ ਜਾਂ salad ਹੁੰਦਾ ਆ. So ਉਹਦਾ ਤਾਂ we hit that up. I'll probably usually get a salad going before the game, but ਰੋਟੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਖਾਈ ਦੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ, ਰੋਟੀ ਦੁਪਹਿਰ ਨੂੰ ਖਾਈ ਦੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਆ morning skate ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ, ਤਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਤਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਜੋ ਰਿੰਕ ਤੇ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਉਹ ਛਕ ਲਈਦਾ.
That's not a bad game plan. Yeah, you want to have the roti earlier.
You know what it is, though? You don't want to be like, you don't want the cookie to set in, right? If you slam the roti right before the rink, then my energy's not going to be there, man. And I can't slam like 6 coffees before the game, then I'm bouncing off the wall. So you got to have that balance.
I just want to say I had no idea Randip was a vegetarian. I had no clue.
Jagraj has not been paying attention to hockey in Canada, Punjabi.
see, I'll tell you why Jagraj thinks that. Now I'm going to try to read your mind here, Jagraj. It's because Randip can always have a bata or a peg after a game or whatever, and he probably associates that to like je banda peg launda
chicken jarur na
peg naal chicken leg.
Yeah.
But he's a rare few. I know about a handful of guys, and Randip's one of those guys. He could have the peg and enjoy the veg.
Gee. So for me, it's more मैं इस करके नहीं मीट शकता because मैंने ethical reason but I still have the drinks. Yeah, so you're right. Observation ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਸਹੀ ਹੈ. ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ dinner ਤੇ ਕਦੀ ਗਏ ਆ, ਮੈਂ veggie burger ਖਾਣਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ, but ਨਾਲ ਕੁਝ ਬਤਾ ਲਾ ਲਈਦਾ.
He has eggs. I know you eat eggs.
Yes, yeah.
Right. Okay.
That's true.
There you go. You learned something today, Jagraj.
Jagraj, and you haven't been paying attention to our catering menus that we fill out on a weekly basis. Always vegetarian for me, man.
Yeah, but no, of course. But Randip, I kind of wanted to touch a bit about your earlier career in broadcasting, because not many people might know, but you have been with Omni for a very long time. So just give us a bit of insight on how you chose broadcasting as your career path.
Yeah, that's it's one of the things I really love to talk about, because my path into broadcasting is not conventional at all. And and I think the idea is the right one. You want to get educated based on what you think you'll do in life, but a lot of the times it doesn't work out that way, right? So I got my degree in political science and history. I wanted to get into government, international relations. I had an internship in Ottawa in 2009 with the federal government, and I came back saying, yeah, I don't know if that's for me. I needed like a PhD, or at the very least a master's. And I had, interest in sports. I was a huge sports fan going back to as a kid, whether it was hockey cards, whether it was video games, whether it was, you name it, any sport, I generally followed it. And I started writing on the side for a soccer magazine. No, it wasn't a paying gig. It was, trying to get my kind of, just experience going and on the side. And when I came back from Ottawa, I realized, okay, I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I'm going to keep that going. And what I did in Ottawa was it was a research job. So I was like, okay, let me see if there's something related to research I could find, and and then I'll find a real job, whatever a real job was. I ended up finding a job with Omni News as a researcher, and for me it was interesting because English but I obviously know Punjabi too, and I applied for that job. It was an entry-level job, essentially the lowest rung on the ladder, but it was research related. I'd done that in a bunch of different, different, whether it was NGOs, whether it was not-for-profit, profit industries, government. So I ended up applying for that job, and funny how the world works out. The guy that ended up hiring me for that job, and the guy, former host of Hockey Night in Canada, Punjabi, current manager at Global BC, but Bhupinder hired me for that job, even though I had no media experience, because of me knowing Punjabi was huge to that role that they're looking at, and on top of that, on the ability to be a sponge, the ability to want to learn, have the right attitude. So that's how I got my start in media. When I started, I didn't think I was going to do it for more than 6 months. I thought it was going to be, okay, this is something I'll do, and then I'm going to find whatever I'm going to do in my life after. But, over time, I was decent at what I did. But more importantly for me, Bhupinder, who, as we know, we've established who he is, and Nathan Sekhon, who is our former producer of Hockey Night in Canada Punjabi, he was also working at Omni News at that time. They mentored me so well that it gave me an idea of, okay, if I keep on doing this, I might be able to do something with this. I might be able to build on this. I got promoted, I think, 3 times in 3 years, and Hockey Night in Canada Punjabi came up. So that's kind of my road of how I got involved in media. It was very unconventional, but I think 2 things were really key for me. One was having the right mentors, the right people guiding me in that direction to say, hey, if you work hard, you're going to get opportunities. And B, I think for me too, just having the right attitude of saying, hey, I'm not going to walk in here with an ego. I don't know anything. I'm just going to learn. And what I learn, I want to apply. So really very unconventional. I think I'm a one-off story in media, but that's my road. And the Punjabi language has a huge, huge role in me doing what I do today in English. I got my start in Punjabi media, and was able to not only move into English media, but I still work in both, and that's really important to me.
I had a chance to ask Mantad this question last year as well, but obviously you've been with Hockey Night Punjabi for such a long time, and before you got your Canucks job, you were with Hockey Night Punjabi for such a long time. How hard was it for you to transition to calling games in English when you've been so used to calling them in Punjabi?
Yeah, when I started, even going back to calling games, when I started hosting radio shows with Sportsnet in 2017, it was a little difficult because for so long I'd been broadcasting in Punjabi. When I think broadcast, it was, it was Punjabi. And then having the transition of being a TV, broadcaster, which is we have segments of maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes, about 20 minutes, to go to a radio show, which is 3 hours, and keeping that conversation going for 25-minute segments and navigating that. I'm not gonna lie, going from Punjabi to English on a Saturday till Monday, that Monday was a little rough because you'd kind of have the mindset of working in Punjabi. And one thing, and Harp, I think you can relate to this, is that early on when we started with Hockey Night in Canada Punjabi, I felt like I was doing a lot of translation on the fly, right? Where it was, you would watch the game, you'd think the game in English, and then you translate into Punjabi. But it became a time, for me anyways, Harp, I don't know about your experience, but for me, a couple of years in, I started to think the game in Punjabi. And now I think the game in both languages. But, when I made that switch to radio, it was weird because I was thinking the game in Punjabi and then speaking about it in English. It was a bit of transition. It was so, your brain works in different ways. So when I started in radio, it was a little challenging, I'm not going to lie, because I was so used to thinking the game in Punjabi that going back to English took me a little bit of time to transition.
I didn't think of it that way, but just about year 2 and 3 is finally when I finally started to feel a little bit comfortable, right? It doesn't mean I'm fully comfortable yet either, but that's how long it takes. And even like ਹੁਣ ਜੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਚ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਜੇ ਕੋਈ ਆਮ ਬੰਦਾ ਤੁਰ ਕੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ, I feel like that Punjabi is a little bit harder for me to sometimes conversate than the hockey,
Than the broadcast.
than the broadcast. Broadcast has become such a second nature after all these years.
Yeah, it's weird, man. It's really weird how the brain, you train yourself to do certain things. But I go back to 2017, where it's like, oh yeah, hosting a radio show in English, no problem. I've been speaking that my whole life. It took a while. It took a while for me to like retrain myself to be like, this should be easy. But it wasn't as easy as I thought it would be. But it is an interesting example.
So when HNIC Punjabi ultimately made the transition, when obviously Rogers bought the rights and they made the transition over to Omni, with that, we started the whole intermission segments, because as many not may know before, when we used to be on CBC, the intermission segments used to be straight to the English one. It used to be a simulcast thing. When you first started on Omni, you were kind of thrown into the bush, or thrown into the woods, I'd say, with doing the intermission segment. So how hard was it to put all that together?
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, Harp. The first year we didn't do intermissions. It was the second year that we ended up doing it. So I've actually experienced alongside Harp, both of those. And the first year,
I think it could have been even two. It could have been 2 years.
2 years, right?
Or maybe
Yeah.
3.
Years, yeah.
Like I remember doing at least 2 years for sure.
Yeah,
So we didn't do intermissions for 2 years. It was a 3-man set. Like we would do the pregame and we would do the postgame, and the same 3 guys called the game.
That's right. And having that experience, first year it was because it was, so new to us. I think we all understood that, okay, this is going to make our life a little bit easier because we're all very new at this, right? Hadnadan had done it before. Bhupinder obviously had been in the broadcast game for a long time, but Harp was brand new. I worked behind the scenes, but on air, I was brand new. A lot of the people that we mixed in eventually, even as started off as fill-in folks, and now they're on every single week. But back then they were all new too. It was a difficult kind of transition. So first year, I don't think there was any issues. I think we felt like we're in the deep end already. But year 2 is when I think a lot of the leadership on the team, Bhupinder and Nathan, is when they really started to say, hey, why not, guys? Like, this is kind of weird. We're a Punjabi show and we've got these intermission segments that don't really jive with our audience. Awesome, English talent, but if you want to watch that, you can go over to CBC. So that's when Bhupinder and Nathan started bringing it up, and I got early on it was challenging, and then for me it was just getting the experience of like, man, that's a long time, 15 minutes on air in the intermissions, especially when you're starting off. Now it's not a big deal, but back then it felt like an hour every intermission, right? And overall, I think as we went on, as we gained a little bit more experience and got comfortable and found our voice, we leaned into it. We loved it. I really enjoyed it because back then I was an analyst, so I could, lean into some of these segments. But Pedla, it was a little, we were a little rigid. I'm not going to lie. It took a while to get used to. But looking back at it, Jagraj, I think it was the best thing, one of the best things that ever happened in our show, because that allowed us to flex our personality. That allowed us to show that, we can break down the play, but at the same time, we can have some fun with it. We can come up with fun segments. We can flex our own comedy if need be, or vent, right? If we got angry at a call or a bad call, guess what? One of the analysts is going to go off. So I think it was one of the best things that could happen.
I know, in terms of speaking of comedy, I know you guys were telling me a story last year on how, like, a couple of shows in, the lights turned off on the set and the whole set's lights went out. What would you say? You've been on the show for 9 years now, coming up on 9 years. What would you say was probably like the funniest moment, either on air or off air on the show?
Ooh, okay. That one, the one that you mentioned, was actually one of the scariest because I can say this. At that point, I got like a week before I had been laid off by the news team, so it was just one of those things. It's job cuts, and I can laugh about it now, but it was a weird spot mentally, right? Where, hey, you don't necessarily have a job in news, and a week after that, the lights go out at HNIC Canada Punjabi. And it just like everything went dead. We were no longer on air. It was a black screen and we were freaking out, right? Long story short, it wasn't anything to do with our show. It was apparently some maintenance on the roof that they forgot to tell people that there's a show going on. So they turned off all the power. We eventually made it back on air. But in the moment, me and Harp, I remember having this conversation of, are we done? Did they just cancel us? Right. So it's something we can laugh about now. But back then, Harp, it was was pretty high drama.
Yeah, I remember it was a hot sunny day. We called an earlier game. It must have been a 4 o'clock Pacific time start. I think it was a playoff game,
That's right.
and it must have been Aprilish. And yeah, the lights went out, and I was like, man, is this how they do it? Like, the Krusty the Clown shows on hiatus. Like, what is that what they do? They just pull the plug and they don't even tell you. Yeah, but that was a bit of a scare. And then I think I had my car got towed the same day because I was parked in the wrong spot.
That's
I was just
right.
like, man,
Let
it
them make up
wasn't a
for
good
it.
day.
But we did get paid regardless. We only did like I think one period or whatever. The funniest
We did or we
moments-
didn't?
No, we got paid. We got paid.
Okay.
The funniest, you're gonna have to go back and check the invoices. The funniest moment though, we have so much fun on this show. And it's interesting because even sometimes, Harp will look at us when we're behind the scenes with the panel guys, and he'll look back at us and be like, what the heck are you guys laughing at? Like, right? Like there might be some noise in the background. But I think overall for me, there's been so many moments. Harp, can I bring up the one that I'm going to say?
I don't know which one, but I've had so many clumsy moments that I feel like
I think my top 5, 4 of them are Harp.
Yeah, I was gonna say 8 out of the top 10, but yeah, same thing.
My favorite has to be, I think because I'm involved in it a little bit, I have an extra meaning with it. When it was when I threw to Harp and Montada, and Montada asked him a question, and we can't hear Harp. We're like, what happened? Like, his audio is off. What's going on? So Montada throws back to me because the producer's like, hey, audio issue. As he's throwing back to me, I realize Harp's not wearing a headset. So he's talking without a mic. So he was just standing there without a mic on. So while I do that, while it comes back to me on studio, he puts his headset on. He realizes what's going on too. And I throw back to these guys and we're just like on air laughing our ass off. Everybody, it was one of those moments where it's just like, we've all kind of been there, but we figure it out right before we go on air. In this moment, it didn't happen, and it was legitimately like laugh out loud funny.
Like,
yeah, there's panic behind the scenes too, Cheese, and they're like, what's going on? They're trying to play with all the switches and stuff, and they couldn't figure it out either.
I've only been.
Raja's like, I think it was Raja last year, and he's like, throwing back to you. Oh, no, it was Nathan 2 years ago. Throwing back to you, and then right as it was throwing back to me, they start laughing. And it was like you could hear this in the background, like figuring out what's going on. It was one of those moments, man. That was just like, we laugh about it now because we're, back then it was just like so much confusion. You're kind of like, what's going on? Did we lose our audio feed? And we're like, nope, you just forgot to put on a headset.
I think it was helpful that it was a few years in and not the first year. Otherwise, we would have just we were. That's another thing, Jagraj. We were so serious, and we're just like, we just didn't want to make any mistakes. We would have. How we have banters now back and forth. We have a debate about hockey, about a team or whatever, a topic. We wouldn't even do that. We would just be like, Haji, maybe bilkul sehmat hai thode na. We wouldn't even, and then years later, we had to create a segment called Tu Rehn De.
With Tu Rehn De though, I think that really opened up our personalities. For me anyways, I think it helped with me where, and even with the last couple of years, we've seen some of the guys, like Tagdeed is the nicest human on the planet, right? But in Tu Rehn De, he's opened up the last couple of years too. So it's one where, you're right though. When we started, we were pretty rigid. It was, you learn, you kind of, you develop that voice over time, right?
I've only been with the show for 1 year. I'm entering my second season with you guys now, but just even a month in, I saw how much of a family dynamic we really do have off the air. We'll joke around with each other post game, pre game, but even on the show, whenever something funny will happen, there's always going to be that one funny moment every week. We never go a week without something funny happening. Whether I remember it was Amrit, the one time she visited us, she had a blooper on air, or we make jokes about tax trip to Jamaica. We always have something to laugh about.
Yeah, and I think over the years too, it's kind of everybody is okay, has fun. They Harp was just laughing at himself about the headset thing, right? I've had moments where, and I have no problem bringing it up, where I screwed up my throw to a story, and then right before as the camera was switching to the story, I made a face, which was like reacting to me screwing up, and the viewer saw it. So you could see that me like kind of making this weird face as it's transitioning to the story. And that'll be brought up every now and then. Or Hockey Night in Canada Punjabi, which is what I said once on the English show with Ron McLean. And, you know, that's something that, like, we all are okay to laugh at ourselves. And it's kind of like a family dynamic, right? When you're at home, when you're with your siblings or your cousins or even your parents are taking little pot shots at you or they're making fun of you, most people, because it's a family dynamic, doesn't immediately get mad and run off and say, I'm never talking to you again, right? Like, you understand it's a family vibe. That's kind of what we have at our show too, where, you know, we can crack jokes about whatever, like, you know, Tej Paul or yourself, Jagraj, you guys are new, but we'll still have fun with it, right? Whether it's in our WhatsApp group or whether it's in on the show, or if it's somebody like, you know, Raja, the first time I met him, like I was cracking jokes the first time I met him and he still holds it against me. So it's just a unique vibe that way, right? And, you know, going back 10 years, Harp, I think early on, maybe we were trying to figure out who each of us was. First year, I want to say 2 years maybe, we didn't really have that dynamic as we were trying to figure it out. But over time, you work with somebody, you develop a team, and you know, naturally ho janda, haan ji.
100%. And you mentioned it, Jagraj. It is a family. Like, you know, we get together, we do stuff, you know, over the summer together, or even hanging out after an 8-hour broadcast together.
Yeah.
Right. We're still able to do that because you know what, we get along so well, and it means a lot. I think over the years, I for myself, I appreciate it more. You know, I'm not taking this for granted, and we think about it and we talk about it that, hey, it's a 12-year contract, and here we are, year 10, and who knows what's going to happen after, but we're just enjoying everything game by game, one game at a time.
One game at a time. And you look back at when it started, Harp, where we didn't have any expectations. We didn't know where the road would lead. But now, going through the things that we've seen, right? Obviously, Pittsburgh, we've been able to go to some of the biggest games on the planet over the last decade. We've been able to, you know, go to all-star games and cup finals and outdoor games, and Jovi Haga meet some of the greatest players, celebrities. Jovi Haga, over time, due to this one show, due to this one language. And when if you had mentioned that day one when we recorded the first show, I would never have predicted that. But like, it's a special thing for us, something we'll look back. Who knows where our careers and our lives lead us? But I think this show has been something that we can be extremely proud of, and be proud of not only ourselves, but the community. And Uldavi, like, we're not in these discussions, in these places, without the Punjabi language either, right? Like, ਉਸ ਜਿਹੜੀ language ਉਸ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਭਾਸ਼ਾ ਉਹਦੀ ਦੇਣੀ ਆ, ਉਹ ਤੋਂ ਬਿਨਾਂ ਤਾਂ it would have been very difficult for us to get in the industry, right?
100%. ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕੁਛ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਹੈ, you know, Punjabi ਨੇ ਦਿੱਤਾ, especially for Hockey Night, and for you, you know, going mainstream on the English, it's crazy. I think about it sometimes, like, wow, man, I'm, you know, just thinking about the journey from the start. It's like, wow, apna banda aa gaya ithe. You know, I still don't believe it sometimes. I can't believe I'm doing what I'm doing, but when I look at my colleagues, you know, tu bhi paraya, you know, all our guys, where they've gotten to from this, and you know, it prapti hai denia, right? And it all started from Punjabi.
ਪਰ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕੰਮ ਹਰਨਾਰਾਇਣ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ, ਜਿਹੜਾ ਮੈਂ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਇੰਗਲਿਸ਼ ਚ, you've done it at, you know, the AHL, the Canucks as well. You've done media hits with everybody. You're doing, you made history yourself in the CFL. Like, a team to bina nahi hunda, like, right? You know, even though one of us might be in that position, or one of us makes that moment in NHL history or CFL history, it's a collective that gets you there, right? So anytime you're highlighted, whether it's at the CFL level, or whether Singh is highlighted at the NHL level, or myself at the NHL level, it's, you know, there's a Hockey Night Punjabi story there. And that is so cool, because when I started in 2014, 2015 with Hockey Night Canada Punjabi, I wasn't sure if I was going to do it, guys. I didn't think my Punjabi was good enough. Bhupinder had to convince me to do it, because ਮੈਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਕਰ ਸਕਦਾ ਜਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ, ਜਿਹੜੀ ਮੇਰੀ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਉਸ ਲੈਵਲ ਦੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ. And, you know, it's the greatest decision I was forced to make at that point, that he said, you got to do it, or you should do it. And yeah, it takes you a lot of places, man.
ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸੁਣ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਹਰ ਪੋਡਕਾਸਟ ਹਰਪ੍ਰੀਤ ਪੰਦੇਰ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ।
So Randip, during the summer, what is the most frequently asked question people ask you?
This summer or any summer?
Just this summer. But
This summer.
Because we were at a wedding together, and I'm just thinking, whatever guy's single, the desis all say, "हाँ भाई तेरी बारी करना, तू कਦੋਂ ਕਰਾਉਣਾ ਵਿਆਹ ਹੈਗੀ?"
Okay, there's two questions I was
ਇਹ
asked
ਹੈਗੀ ਆ
this
ਤਾਂ
summer.
ਦੱਸ ਦੇ।
ਉਹ ਤਾਂ ਪੱਕਾ question ਹੈ, ਉਹ ਤਾਂ ਮਿਲਦਾ ਹੀ ਰਹਿੰਦਾ।
ਹਾਂਜੀ।
ਦੂਜਾ question ਸੀ ਕਿ Canucks ਤੇ color analyst TV ਤੇ ਕੌਣ ਬਣੂਗਾ? Those were the two questions I got all summer long.
That was a worst kept secret.
Oh yeah. But I was actually happy that I left the country for about 3.5 weeks, because every week, I'm not telling you, from Basaki Nagagitan in Vancouver all the way into July, that was the question I ended up getting.
There's a guy at a Raja's wedding, uncle, and I could overhear the conversation he was talking. He's like, यार 52 ਸਾਲ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਐਤਕੀ ਤੇ ਜਿਤਾ ਦੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ।
ਉਹ ਇੱਕ ਅੰਕਲ ਸੀ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰੀ ਤੇ ਜਿਤਾ ਦੇ ਮੇਰੇ ਲਈ। I'm like, ਅੰਕਲ ਮੈਂ ਹੁਣ ਕੀ ਕਰਾਂ ਫਿਰ? I was like, ਅੰਕਲ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ, ਕਮੈਂਟਰੀ ਚ ਤਾਂ ਲਿਮਿਟ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਕੀ ਕਰੀਏ, ਪਰ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ। Really nice guy, ਇੰਨੇ ਸਾਲਾਂ ਦਾ fan, but you get that a lot, man, right? Like my dad came to Canada in 1971, so everybody ਉਸ ਜ਼ਮਾਨੇ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ, especially like, you know, from my dad's start, sawmill workers, been in the country a long time, worked hard, and they're saying, yeah, ਜਿੱਤੂਗੇ ਜਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ, ਸਾਨੂੰ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਦੱਸ ਦੇ। ਮੈਂ ਕਿਹਾ, I don't know about that.
Training camp starts tomorrow. What are some of your predictions? Like, do they make the playoffs this year?
I like their chances based on the fact that the Pacific, yes, it's a difficult division, no doubt about that, right? You look at the top three: Edmonton, Vegas, throw LA in there. Seattle, I'm not sure if they're able to hang with the big boys, but I look at Calgary, Seattle, Vancouver as three of the teams that'll be fighting for that wild card. Like Central does not look strong to me compared to previous years. So I think they're going to be in it. I think, you know, the fit on this team now is a lot better than previous years. Sure, they picked up a lot of guys with size and muscle, and defensemen stay-at-home guys, but they lacked that the last few years. So overall, I like the fit better. I think the prediction I'll have for training camp, this is not based on inside information, this is just my prediction, is that Quinn Hughes is going to be playing next to Ian Cole. Ian Cole, jo ke assi changi tarah jaante Harp.
Yes.
Pittsburgh the connection. Main actually ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਹੀ ਕੀਤੀ ਸੀ Bonino ਬਾਰੇ ਕੁਝ ਦਿਨ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ, and he said he was listening to the call a couple of days ago because his daughter, who's 3 years old, is like addicted to the goal call.
Really?
So Ian Cole's daughter, who was not even born during Bonino, is listening to that goal call these days.
Wow.
So, but that's my prediction, that Cole and Hughes together on the top pairing.
Ian Cole, suni gal.
For so long, Randip, you've been synonymous with the saying that representation matters. Like, it's been something that's very close to you, very dear to you, and you've mentioned it a lot, especially when you were hired by the Canucks last year. Obviously, when you first started, there weren't many Punjabi sports journalists. There weren't many, especially in the lower mainland, there weren't many Punjabi journalists who were aiming to go this route. You know, parents usually want to say, "Ke tu accountant ban ja, tu lawyer ban ja, tu aa kar la." It's like parents obviously wanted that, but what was basically your inspiration as you were going towards the media path? Like, how did you get rid of all that outside noise?
Yeah, it was a challenge early on, right? When I started in media, I didn't really know where I was going to go. I was kind of, maybe I was naive early on, just saying, hey, I'm going to work here for a little bit and then we'll see what life gives you, right? It's a very open-minded way of thinking. But at the same time, growing up, there were people that you saw in the sports field. And maybe they didn't necessarily, you didn't make that connection, but there were people that you said, okay, I like the way that this person does that, or I like, you know, whether they're apne da katte si, let's be honest. But I know Harp can relate to this, is, you know, you see a Robin Baba play in the NHL, you cover a Manny Malhotra, and you, at least it opens the door a little bit to say there are some Apane that have played this game. So there is a hockey card that I had with the Anaheim Ducks in 1991 that says Bawa, right? There was a picture that Harp, I know you took with him, or you were sorry watching his first game. All of that stuff. I think looking back at it now, moments like that, they do build an in at the very least. But coming up, I didn't see really, a huge connection with hockey and coverage in our community. So when Hockey Night in Canada Punjabi came around, I didn't know if there was an inroad to mainstream coverage. I'll be completely honest with you, because as you say, right, if you see it, you can be it. We didn't really see it in the media scape. We saw it in the playing aspect. But as you start to turn, your career into like more of in the Punjabi show, you could start to see the potential. You could say, hey, it's not only about speaking one language. I speak two languages. I speak them well. And there's no reason why I can't. Halat hun are very different from what they used to be in the 80s and 90s. And you write your own story in today's day and age. We can go on Twitter, we can go on, Reels and TikTok now, but back even when we were getting started, there was an acknowledgement of, hey, if we do something cool, it may lead to something else. It may open a door. So even though, in the media perspective, we didn't necessarily have that person we could look at in the hockey world and say, hey, that person's doing what I want to do. They took the exact same path. There were still examples of, okay, this is the right time to be in this field. This is the right time to be representing our community, because our community loves hockey. Our community is giving us support, and una the support, then now we can go to the next level and we can carve our own path. And that's where I look back and say, now we're in a position, not only me, but everybody on our show, is that we can, guide the future viewers to be like, hey, if these guys can do it, if these guys can carve out their own path, maybe we can follow. We can follow in their footsteps and take it to the next level. And that's the hope when we see, young people like yourself, Jagraj, who are going through school or who have gone through school. I get DMs on Instagram all the time, and we might not have had necessarily those people to really guide or follow, but we did have elements of those people in our society where you tap into. And now looking at the future, I think we're in a much better spot, and hopefully the kids coming up behind us as well are going to be in an advantageous spot too.
2010 was the first time I actually fell in love with hockey, when the Olympics were here, and I started watching Harn Ryan in 2011 when they were still under CBC. But 2014 was really the first time I saw you, Harp, and I think Gopi and Tak came on a bit later though, but that was the first time I saw you guys with Harn Ryan. And you guys can even ask my parents. I pointed to the TV right then. I was 10 years old at the time. I'm gonna be like them one day. That's the message I had to my parents, that Mammy is shote ekdan kam karna hai. And looking back on it, like 8 years later, I end up my dream ends up coming true in a way, So how does it feel to you knowing that you're inspiring kids like me to chase that path, that we do have a path to be there if we want to?
That's amazing to hear, man, because when we started, that wasn't on our mind. It was, let's cover this sport, let's do the best job we can. But now looking back at it, just the fact that we were on television, the fact that Hockey Night in Canada Punjabi existed on CBC first and then made its move over to Omni, the fact that we were able to do that, inspired hopefully a generation, hopefully maybe even beyond that, right, as the show goes forward. So I think now to hear about that from yourself, I know Amrit mentions she used to watch the CBC show back in the day as well. Now she's on the show and doing great things in Toronto. That is really, really special for us to hear, because it does show that our work, not the hockey coverage, not the stats, not the analytics, not the dump and chase, not the left wing lock, that's great. But it's not that, those individual plays don't matter. It's what impact do you make for your community, the community that's given you so much. And to hear, having an impact on you and guiding what you did, that means a lot to all of us. I know I can speak for the entire team, but it also shows that the power of having people, A, of different backgrounds, but B, in your own language, You know, when we grew up, it was, you kind of had to pick one. Either you're Punjabi or you're English speaking Canadian, or you kind of tried to hide your Punjabiness when you were younger at school. That was the world we lived in at that point, especially in like elementary school and high school. No, not anymore. And that's what we can be proud about, where in our work, we are able to be both. We're able to be individuals that are ourselves, right? You're able to work in Punjabi and English. So if that helps the next generation, you know, guide who they are, and they can get opportunities from being Punjabi, being proud of the language that they speak, being proud of the identity, and speaking English, and doing all of those things in the English language too. That's awesome. And, you know, hopefully that's something we can see more in sports, where, you know, organizations are saying, hey, you're a great English speaker, we want you on air, but you know what, you're pretty good at Punjabi too, and we want to invest in that audience, in that community too.
Just wanted to add a quick story about Mantar. He went to visit Harnryan, Pola Jahan, and Inderpreet back when they were still with the CBC. Mantar went with his mom to meet these guys, and Mantar's mom goes to Harnryan and the guy. She goes, "Ah, mera munda hai te ine bhi ek din thode naal commentary karni ek din." You know what I mean? She knew what her kid's passion was and what his goal was, and it came true. He's with us today.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy though if you think about it. Like, this show's been on air for 15, 16 years now. I think this is year 16 officially on both networks, and these are the people that we know about. You know, we get countless DMs and countless people reaching out saying "Mami Kadna," right? Right. I think there's a you know, and that's cool, because there's people that are young, there's people that are older, but yeah, harp to Mantar's story and Jagraj's story, like, and Amrit's story actually, for that matter too. It speaks to, you know, how that our show's been able to motivate individuals and say, yeah, I want to improve my Punjabi so I can be on air. I want to speak Punjabi. I want to, you know, skill up, and I want to learn more about this game of hockey so I can be on the show. It's, you know, you look back at it after maybe 10 years or near 10 years, and you can really take it in. Maybe when you're going through it. But now that we've got almost a decade to think back on it, yeah, it's a huge difference.
Shout out to Mrs. Pandal. She had that vision for Mantar ever since a very young age.
Mantar had no choice after that.
Exactly. He just he had to go with what she said. But looking back at it now, like, I can tell you, I'm the only Punjabi kid in my BCIT class. I take broadcast and journalism at BCIT. I'm the only Punjabi kid. There's nobody else. And the fact that I'm able to represent that, like, in itself is such a huge moment of pride for me, because I wear my kada to school every day. People ask me, what is this? Like, what's I have a quote on there, a shabad on there, and people ask me, like, what is this? And it feels so nice to be able to educate others about that. And through BCIT, you get so many other opportunities. And one of them is actually Sportsnet 650. I wanted to touch a bit on 650. You obviously started in 2017 with your radio show there. So just explain to us how that all began.
Yeah, I was on Hockey Night in Canada Punjabi for about 4 years at that point, heading into my 4th season. And Sportsnet 650 was just about to launch in the city. And, you know, for those folks that are based in Vancouver or listening from outside the city, it's been for 16 years. There was one radio station in this town. It was a TSN radio station. And then Sportsnet 650 came to town. They got the Vancouver Canucks rights. And the manager there, Craig McEwen, for a lot of Canucks hockey fans, they'll know who he is. He used to do the intermission interviews. He was Sportsnet, bureau chief out here. He reached out and said, "Hey, Randip, love what you do in Hockey Night in Canada Punjabi. I'm launching a radio station here in Vancouver, and I want it to represent hockey fans of today and tomorrow, and I want it to represent the community. And I really like what you do in Hockey Night in Canada Punjabi. I want you to be a part of this team." And it was an interesting and, you know, awesome way to approach, because in a city so diverse, the media here, it hadn't been necessarily the most diverse. So Sportsnet and 650, the way that it was created, it was saying, hey, we're gonna, you know, that fan on Scott Road, we're talking to you. We see you. We feel that passion. That fan in Richmond, that fan everywhere. Like it, and it wanted to get people with maybe not the voices that we'd heard in the past, new, fresh voices. So that's how my journey started with radio, and it comes directly from Hockey Night in Canada Punjabi. Like that was cited as, we love what you're doing and we want you to bring that to radio. We want that your coverage. And over the years, I've been able to host with a number of people. Perry Solkowski, who is a legend in Vancouver and Edmonton. He used to host back with Darren Detition in Edmonton. I've hosted with Dan Riccio, Satyr Shah, Vic Nazar. It's a really fun experience for me because I came from TV and it was very, very new to me, having long form conversations, having fun, man, repping Punjabi culture and repping just fun things. Like, I don't even know, we mentioned Babu Man on the radio show and people like Apane would love that, right? Like there would be like, oh my God, he mentioned Babu Man, and that explained who he is. We would have fun segments, which Harp would take part in too every now and then. The Macho Man marriage proposal on WWF back in the day. All of these things, like radio brought out something that it was just a really fun experience for me. So I love what I do now, but there's, hosting those shows on a daily basis, that just taps into something where you can just, the listener is in on the conversation, they're engaging, and you can talk serious sports, but also maybe for 10 minutes, you're just laughing your ass off, right? And having fun.
Yeah. And with the radio, we had that Punjabi panel. They even made us
Right.
this instrumental tune. It was, I don't know who's, I think it was Notorious Jat or something.
It was Randy J's produced
That
at
Randy J.
Notorious Jat, yeah.
That's
It was-
right.
So shout out to Dom Shamati, who's a producer with Sportsnet 650. Dom's really good with music, so I gave him a couple of songs to choose from, and he made the Hockey Night Punjabi panel's intro.
He chose a pretty good beat.
Notorious
Randy
Janda.
J, hosted
Greatest
by
song.
Randy J.
Greatest
Yeah,
song.
there's two Randy J's. So with 650, you were there from the very beginning when it launched, with radio, with television, media, lots of changes, lots of cuts, and I think it's just you and Sat that are left from the original team. Am I right? For 650?
Yeah, original on-air crew, the day of the launch, me and Sat, and then I think Richo came in like a week or two later, but yeah, thereabouts.
Okay.
Yeah, so me and Sat like to say we're the original too.
Nice. And after that, I remember you did the Canucks, the rinkside reporting too, right?
That's right. That was the year that the COVID year, really, the year that COVID hit, and that was a really cool experience for me. It was, I think, first of all, I was the first guy to interview Bo Horvat after he was named captain. I can go back at that interview and look back and say, hey, I did the first interview. But overall, it just offered a new experience for me, something I hadn't done before. I learned a lot from that experience, especially, how to be, the player involvement. And, when you're in studio, it's different. You're reacting to a lot. Being out in the field, just kind of managing the relationships, getting to know the guys from different perspectives. And it was intense in the sense that, something would change. You'd put in a request for one player and, maybe they make a mistake on the goal that scored 30 seconds later and you still got to interview him, right? So you got to be careful because internally, this guy's not happy at himself right now. So his answers are going to be maybe 6 seconds long and you're going to have to make the best out of this interview. On the other side of things, some people were just jokes the whole time. You could ask them the driest question of all and they'd give you, something that was really, really good. So it was a great learning experience for me, and just being in the hallways while the game's going on taught me to watch the game a little differently as well.
Dod soda, when can we purchase it? A cold one, like from 7-Eleven or supermarket aisles. When's it going to be available?
That's in the works right now, boys. I can't say too much, but don't worry. It is something that down the road I'd love to make happen. But it is something that, we'll see.
It's the same excitement as like Duff beer. You know what I mean? It's like you've seen this thing and then you're finally able to go and purchase it, right?
Hey,
just tell me about the whole Dud soda thing. Like how did it come about?
Yeah, so obviously for a lot of your listeners and anybody that Punjabi, they know it. I don't have to tell the backstory. Generally with mainstream community, you do, but if you don't know what it is, summer drink, cream soda milk, comes from the old country. It used to have shadabat or rose syrup and all of that. Pani de na, dodod de na. But in Canada, we remixed it. How the brand came along, it was actually pretty funny. It starts with Alex Auld, who is the former Canucks backup goaltender. He was starter in the playoffs as well, and in the regular season at points too. He used to have a show with Sat on 650, and they used to have an Ask Alex Anything segment every Monday. And one Monday, I forget the listener's name, but he texted in and said, "Hey, Alex, have you ever tried dud soda?" And Alex was like, "I have no idea what that is." Sat didn't know what it was. So obviously, being the proud Punjabi that I am, the next day on the show, I brought it in. We did an on-air taste test. Alex was kind of like, "Hey, yeah, I don't know if I'll have this again, but this is good," right? Like, this is good. And people loved it. People loved that I brought it up on air. People loved that I was given something from their past or maybe even their present some love. And what happened was, like, all the texts that would come in the show in the next like few weeks were like a huge number of them were Dud Sorda related. And it just kind of became a part of my radio identity for a while. So that was kind of the launch point. And after that, I decided to have, I've always loved the color. It kind of stands out, whether you're drinking Dud Sorda back in the day, whether you still have it at the Nugget Keaton or wherever. I decided to say, you know what, let's go with this. Let's create some t-shirts. Version 1.0 happened over a year ago. Version 2.0 happened right as the summer kicked off. So it's been fun. It's been a lot of support in the community. I've gotten orders from Australia, Europe, all over the United States. A lot of love in BC, obviously, since that's where I'm from. Alberta, Manitoba, you name it. Like, I'm just going off the top of my mind. But it's been really cool to see people love it, and they take pride in it. So, I think we just had to remind people that Lindsay Lohan did not create Coke and milk. It was Punjabis and Pakistani Punjabis or Indian Punjabis that did back in the country, back in the old country, that created it, the Dud Sorda connection, and we remix it here in Canada. So it's been cool, man. It's been a real, new journey for me, because I've always loved trying new things and the creative side of me, creating clothing and all that. So it's been a fun journey where I'm able to try the stuff, be creative, but at the same time give something for my community, an opportunity to put it in the spotlight, but also share with people that maybe aren't of the community. And a lot of non-Punjabis, send me pictures of them drinking it, right? And say, "Hey, I finally tried it and it's really good," which is great, man. Which is, at least it creates a conversation between Punjabis and non-Punjabis, or South Asians and non-South Asians.
How do you make the perfect one? Are you using 2% skim, homogenized, and then what's the concentration?
Okay, historically for me, it used to be homogenized because you want to make it a little creamy, thicker, right?
Yeah.
But over the last couple of years, I've adjusted that. I go 2%. I pour in the cream soda first, and then milk. I know this is debated by many people in the community that you got to do milk first or cream soda. I go cream soda first. I like having that. Then you put the milk. For me, it's like a 60-40 ratio of, 50-50. I'd say 60-40, whatever. Don't overload it either way, though, because if it's too light pink, it's not a good thing. If it's too bright pink, it's not. You just got to have the right ratio. So I'd go 2%, and then you got to go with your favorite cream soda.
60-40 what? Like, what's 60, the dud or the cream soda?
Okay, so I like to go a little bit more on the cream soda than most people do, but I would say for me, like 50-50 is the right ratio, where you appease both sides. Like, if you're making it for a couple of people, you want to play the safe road, go 50-50. How about you, Harp? I think you have opinions on this.
I'm about the same. I think 50-50 and thicker is better. I wouldn't go with skim, but anything 2% or above, I think that would be proper.
2%, yeah.
Yeah, I still haven't tried Karela juice yet, though.
Oh, you had to remind me of that.
Well,
you remember that one, Jagraj?
Yeah. During our little all-star competition that we had, loser had to have Karela juice, and I remember Randip didn't really enjoy that after
the skills competition
session.
Is not my thing. The skills competition the last 2 years, I wasn't last 2 years ago, but I wasn't first either. Yeah, last year I was embarrassment, but I was smart. I kind of rigged it in the sense that I had said the final two, the bottom two, so I wasn't going down by myself. Gurpreet had to also slam the Karela juice because he was second last.
Last year, I remember during I was actually working retail at the Canucks team store last year during the Diwali night. And then one of my coworkers, she was also Punjabi. She tells me, "Oh, there's a dud soda pop up. I'm gonna go check it out." You know, me not knowing the brand at the time, I thought we had actual dud soda at Rogers Arena in the glass, and I got so excited I popped right out. I popped right out to go and check it out, and then I saw it was a clothing brand. And obviously I hadn't started working with you guys, so really me and you didn't really know each other, but I was just so fascinated as to how someone could turn a drink into a literal clothing brand company. So big props to you on doing so.
No, it's been cool. It's been a really fun experience. But that night it was interesting because I did contemplate. I'm like, to get some actual dud soda here, right? People have the brand, but the drink, but just the logistics of it would have created a bit of a mess, and you don't want to pre-mix it completely either. It wouldn't have tasted great. So we'll have something in store this year along those lines. Not necessarily a drink, maybe, but I'm working on something. So keep an eye out for this Diwali night at Rogers Arena if you're in Vancouver, because there might be something in the works. But like, that's an example where it's been cool to collaborate with the Canucks, right? They were in their vendor space at Diwali night, something that I've been helping to organize for the past 7 years now. This is the 7th year that the Canucks are doing it. They're the leaders in this space when it comes to South Asian night and celebrating the community. Not only selling tickets. That's not what this should be about. It's about ਜਿਹੜੇ ਇੱਥੇ Vancouver ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ Punjabi South Asian ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ honor ਵੀ ਕਰਨਾ, right? And that's what they've been doing really well, but they've also been highlighting a lot of businesses and a lot of people in the community. So I'm looking forward to be involved again this year.
Yeah, Randip, I was thinking about why you had to drink the Karela juice. That's because you didn't hit a target in the skills competition.
I was 0 for 4. That's correct.
0 for, yeah. So, but I'm thinking about it. Yeah. I'm thinking about it now. It's like the Montreal screw job where Brett got screwed by Vince McMahon. But the longer I thought about it, I'm like, I think Hitman was in on it. I think they collabed. Now I'm starting to think that you missed them all on purpose just so you could drink the Karela juice.
Okay, I'd like to say, even if I admit that I maybe played down my performance a little bit, I'm still not as good as you and Tak are. There's no way I would have not probably come in second last anyways.
Oh, we're trying. We're full on trying. And Khabib had fun with that one.
Harp, okay, let me tell you a little bit about Harp and his intensity. So
don't tell this one.
This one, I'm just gonna say this.
Okay.
We were once playing at a charitable. That wasn't a charity. It was a community ball hockey tournament. But we were invited as Hockey Night in Canada Punjabi, right? So we're going like 50% effort. We're just out there with the kids having fun. And then we played one team that was all in. They were like taking the body. They were being physical. And me and Harp had enough. We were just like, all right, man, this is enough. So I'm just gonna say me and Harp started getting a little physical too, but then we had to stop playing because it was just like, all right, this is getting a little too competitive, and this is gonna end up turning into like open ice.
They're
body checks.
18-year-old kids, Juan and Monday, right? But they were leaning in, like the ball's not even there. I'm playing back, and the guy's just like, the ball's not nowhere close. He's just turning and just like full on body checking me, shoulder to shoulder, and I was like, either you take it or you respond back, but we did respond back. But I just remember our teammates just like, hey guys, calm down. Remember who we're representing here. And what the tournament's for.
One guy was draped all over my back, and I was just like, it was intense, right? And I just kind of did like a push back, like just get off me, launched the poor kid. I was like, all right, I'm done for the rest of the. That's it. That's the end for me. This is getting a little too intense.
Okay. Just this week, we find out news. Well, I found out this news late about Jajad Khaira signing with the Minnesota Wild. I actually missed it. I guess it must have got drowned out with all the Babcock, news about him resigning. So that's great news for us, just being Punjabi, that, hey, man, we still got this guy playing. He signs a 2-way contract. Who's next? Do you think RSD Baines is close to getting a call up this year?
With Baines, I think with him, it's been something that, he's kind of raised the floor on what he can be. and raise the ceiling on top of that as well. Like at first there, people thought maybe he's going to be somebody that is going to, be an overager, but can he be consistent in the AHL, right? He was a guy that played so well in the CHL, but he was older than everybody else. Well, what did he do? He smashed through that ceiling to say, yeah, you know what? I can be an AHLer. Last year, I talked to people in Abbotsford, and they were like, this guy is the most improved player from game 1 to the end of the season. He's improved the most. And now when you fast forward to the Young Stars Classic that just happened in Penticton, most people were talking about, Aiden McDonough or Steve Vance. That's, the two names of the older players to say they could, do something at the NHL level. And I think with Vance, one of the things that we have to keep an eye on is that he's got really good skill. You don't put up over 100 points in the CHL and be the leading scorer without skill. But his work ethic and his smarts, that's how you make it to the NHL. Because there's a lot of players that have high skill in the AHL too. But once they start playing pro hockey, they're making the wrong decisions and they're relying solely on skill. This guy has that brain. He's got, the work ethic where every year he is smashing through those ceilings. Every year he is showing that he can do more. And I know within the Canucks organization, I've talked to a few people at Abbotsford and in Vancouver, and they're like, this guy is showing us what he can do. This guy is not shocking them, but he's kind of, they're having to reevaluate him every few months because he has, opened their eyes to maybe there's more potential there. So I would say the next guy, Harp, no doubt, is our Steve Vance, based on the fact that, he continues to surprise people within the hockey world, not only in Vancouver, that he can be a pro player for sure, but, on a line, that needs, good checking. Can he penalty kill? Yes, he can. He's willing to take a beating in front of the net to score. He can do all of those things. So yeah, he's definitely the next one to be watching out for. I also want to give a shout out to a kid in the OHL who's going to be most likely a first round pick this year. Padek is his last name. He's a defenseman, right shot D. I believe he's playing with I think it's Saginaw, if not mistaken. I might have to. It's one of the Michigan teams, Flint or Saginaw. Another South Asian kid coming up, and right shot D in the NHL. They're very highly coveted. So if there's a run on any defenseman in the next draft, watch out for him as well. So another South Asian kid coming up real quick.
Randip, I really appreciate you coming on. You did this short notice. I know you got a busy couple weeks coming up. Training camp starts tomorrow. You said you got a family wedding as well. So just before we check out here, any Sneha to the community or anything you want to say?
I'd like to say thank you to the community. This is something that, over the last, if I look back at the last 9 years now, it's been a whirlwind, right? Time flies. But any success that I've been able to have in my own broadcast career, Hockey Night in Canada, Punjabi, all of us, it's been with the support of the community. There's been, if there's moments, whenever we're out in the community, people come up to us, whether they've been in the country for 50 years or 5 years, or we've had people that are new to the country and say, love your show, right? Like essentially that's what they always and that means a lot, especially those early years, 3-4 year up until about year 4 of the show. We weren't sure where the show was going, and we didn't know where it was, but a lot of people in the community really stood up for us. So to all the listeners of our podcast, to the community members out there, I want to say thank you for having Hockey Night in Canada Punjabi's back, having my back. I see the text that you guys send. I see the tweets that you send. It means a lot. And whenever we're on air, whenever we're in the community, whenever we are doing stuff out there, whenever I'm doing it, no doubt, I always have community on top of mind, because without the language, without the support we have here in BC, but all across Canada, we can't do anything. We wouldn't be at the level that we've been able to reach. So and thank you for everything that you've done and supporting all of us.
And you know what? We'll be listening to you on the radio, and I'll be seeing you Saturday nights for the next 9 months.
Can't wait.
Right? Can't wait.
Let's go.
I'm looking forward to that new adding a few new catering items this year. That's what we look forward to. We get this catering document on Google, and that's like one of the most exciting parts of the week. Hey guys, this is what we're getting.
Shout out Pizza Garden.
Hey, I also added burgers last year, right? So come on now.
Yeah.
We'll see what we bring this year.
Hopefully whoever drops it off doesn't drop it off in the alley and we're not looking for whoever it is.
Oh, that was a Hall of Fame picture. But no, thanks for having me, guys, and keep doing what you guys are repping. Obviously the Punjabi side and the English side. So ਜਿਹੜੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੀ community ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋ, but you're opening it up to listeners outside of our community too. Love it, and let's go Hard Podcast. Let's go.
Thanks, Janda, for joining us, and we'll do this again soon. Thank you.